webinar titled Application Migrations at Scale, a topic that is near and dear to my heart. So let's set some ground rules. So this session will focus on sharing our experience executing large-scale migrations, and when we say large-scale we're talking about a magnitude of at least 500 servers. We're focused on imparting lessons from our experience on proven migration patterns, methods and tools based on our experience globally with our customers. And the why of this session is to help you, our current or future customers, reduce risk and help you to accelerate your migration plans and programs. So let's set some context first up. Why are we here today? What has piqued your interest to attend this webinar? At a broad level and fundamentally, we see that organisations are motivated to migrate to the cloud for reasons of cost or the need to liberate their IT and align with business closely to be more agile. Some organisations, or a lot of organisations, are facing some form of disruption, whether that's from new entrants into markets or from their existing businesses and domains transforming into a digital world. Other reasons for customers and organisations to be motivated to migrate to cloud are to exit data centres and seeing that the running and maintenance of a data centre is not core or fundamental to their business and therefore want to offload that responsibility to somebody else and focus on their core competencies. Another reason is to enable the organisation to have an infrastructure that is supportive of a 24/7 business environment, and that may be in a form of a hybrid IT architecture where cloud can be used for business continuity or disaster recovery purposes as a first foray. So, what are some of the typical migration challenges that are faced by customers? First up, there's the topic of security. Now, the world has come a long way from a few years ago when cloud was first mentioned in terms of security concerns. The conversation has shifted from that, from a dialogue of why cloud to why not cloud. And there are a lot of customer examples, case studies that we can point you to show customers successfully moving to the cloud in all domains, in regulated environments and so forth. There's also the challenge of incomplete and outdated inventory or ineffective asset management. This is another common issue as there are many unknown assets in the current world or your current IT landscape. And this is something that we see repeatedly in terms of the engagements we go into that help customers to migrate. There are known unknowns and unknown unknowns, and I cannot emphasize enough that usually customers will underestimate the complexity and the extent of unknown assets in their environment. There's also the challenge of dealing and potentially migrating off-the-shelf applications and legacy applications that are not necessarily cloud ready. Finally, there's also the issue of staff and having the relevant skills to be involved in a migration to the cloud. So AWS Professional Services has helped a multitude of organisations globally in all industries, organisations large and small, to move to the cloud over the years, and we'll take you through a couple of examples of that in the forthcoming slides. But if you just look at this page here, you'll see that there's the diversity of customers that we work with is quite impressive. So everything from pure commercial organisations to non-profits to government organisations and so on. If we take one example, we look at Condé Nast in the US. So this is an organisation that is a media company renowned for producing the highest quality content for the world's most influential audiences. So some of the brands under Condé Nast organisation are Wired, Vanity Fair, Vogue and GQ. And you can imagine we're talking about an organisation that's come from, is a traditional media company or print media company, and then now is going headstrong into the digital world. So the experience at Condé Nast was over a period of 3 months, they migrated a number of mission critical applications related to HR, legal and sales apps over to AWS. And we're talking about over, again, 500 servers, so it was at scale. We're talking about 1 petabyte of storage and over 100 databases. The benefits that Condé Nast experienced were 40% cost savings and also 40% in terms of an uplift in operational performance. The end result for Condé Nast is that they can now create content faster while improving organisational creativity, productivity, agility, flexibility and also increased time to market. So I'm sure everyone is keen to learn about the mechanics of migrations, but before we do that, let's take a step back and understand where migrations fit into the bigger picture of cloud adoption for an organisation. So over the last few years, AWS has worked with hundreds of orgs around the globe to define their cloud strategies, migrate workloads to the cloud, operate those workloads securely on an ongoing basis and optimize those workloads over time. From all these engagements and experiences, we've observed that there is typically a series of stages in terms of that adoption. Initially, an organisation will trial a project on the cloud, gain experience from that and confidence, and then look to build out a foundational architecture as a preparation step for a migration en masse. Following that, there is a phase involved in optimizing the platform, the environment on the cloud, and realizing the full benefits of that move. So the message really is, as you can see, that cloud adoption is a journey. It requires proper strategy, planning, and a roadmap to achieve your business outcomes. Now, this journey can be disruptive and will drive significant change across your organisation. And the message I want to impart in terms of what's on this slide is that you need to start as soon as you can, start small, learn, iterate, and then accelerate. The last point is you need to remember that every journey to the cloud is different, and you need to understand what your drivers are and what are the priorities for your business. For example, if you are driven by cost pressure, your journey will be completely different to that of a company who is focused on innovation. So the question arises, what is your journey and what does it look like? So the migration journey can be broken up into 5 phases: opportunity evaluation, portfolio discovery and planning, application design, and migration validation, and operate. So opportunity evaluation is all about understanding where you're starting from. What is your existing IT estate and environment, and then using that baseline to look forward and build out a cloud strategy. So the questions really here are, what does your cloud strategy look like? What is your starting point? Where do you want to get to? And it's imperative that you are clear on what your objectives and outcomes are, and you know what you are seeking from this journey. So then we look at how do we get there. Now, there is a framework that AWS have developed called the Cloud Adoption Framework, or CAF for short. And this offers structure to help organisations develop an efficient and effective plan for the cloud adoption journey. It provides guidance and best practices to help you build a comprehensive approach to cloud across your organisation. But like any framework, it's a guide, it's a prompt for customers to think about what their particular journey looks like, again, which is going to be different from another organisation. The CAF provides guidance, supports organization to adapt existing practices, introduce new practices for cloud computing, and at the highest level, the CAF organises its guidance into a number of different areas of focus, or what we call perspectives. And this slide breaks down those 7 perspectives of the CAF. They're quite formulaic in terms of what you would imagine would be inputs into deriving an IT strategy or a business strategy. So it's everything from business perspective to platform to maturity and so on. You'll notice that the last one in the bottom right side there is operating perspective. So I just want to call that out, and my comment there is, from our experience, a lot of organisations and customers, as you know, leave this as sort of something that's thought of last. It's imperative to consider the implications of operations and how you're going to run and operate the platform as part of your migration focus and your cloud strategy. And I cannot emphasise that point enough. Okay, once we set the scene in terms of what your cloud strategy looks like and what your objectives are from that journey, we look at portfolio discovery and planning. So as I mentioned before, a lot of organisations have unknowns in their environment in terms of the specifics of what the current state of play is in terms of their applications, and there are a number of tools available to help you to interrogate and understand what is in your environment. The one on the screen at the moment is the AWS Application Discovery Service that is available as part of our platform. However, it is only one tool amongst many available in terms of offerings from ISVs, and I will give you some details about what sort of products and tools are available. After you get an idea of the applications servers in your current environment, the next step is to undertake an application portfolio assessment. The outcome of the portfolio discovery and application discovery is to derive a heat map and you get a high-level view of the applications in your environment and the fit in terms of the future environment on the cloud, which applications have a high degree of business risk or technical risk in terms of potential move to the cloud, which applications are native, if I can use that word, or seamless or more conducive to a move to the cloud, and which ones are less conducive and maybe unfit to be moved to the cloud. The point here is that you really want to look for what the quick wins are and where there's going to be friction in terms of potentially moving workloads to the cloud. At a high level, there are 6 options or patterns, if you will, in terms of moving and migrating applications to the cloud. And we call them the 6 R's. And every application that you analyse and including that portfolio assessment should be classed into one of these categories. Next slide just provides more details in terms of the specific pattern and some examples. From our experience, the majority of applications fall in the rehosting and replatforming categories. Re-architecting and refactoring provide the most agility and resiliency, but cost more in time and resources. So the thing to take note here is there's a definite trade-off between going in terms of categorising the application to be re-architected or refactored, as opposed to just rehosting something and replatforming something, in terms of the time to get to the target platform. And it comes down to what the drivers are for the customer, what their objectives are, that will drive some of these decisions, what gets migrated first, and what gets put off till later. This slide just takes you through some more of the finer detailed steps associated with each of the migration patterns. So your migration journey can take a number of parts based on the outcome of your IT portfolio assessment and what your business wants. Again, you need to understand the current state, your target state, and the transition required to achieve that target. Then if we move on to doing further analysis, it's important to look at your current estate from an infrastructure perspective and understand what that target state looks like from infrastructure as well as from applications. So some of the activities here involve determining the specific design of the environment on AWS for your infrastructure components. And we're talking about things like instance sizing, whether to use Direct Connect or VPN in terms of connectivity, your network topology, and what security groups look like, etc. But the more information that you have up front as part of your assessment and discovery, the less risk you will have when it comes time to actually execute your migration. Similarly, the same exercise is undertaken from an application perspective and understanding what applications have dependencies on others, and that will help drive the move groups that you define for the actual migration execution. The last point there is in terms of determining the AWS environment also leads us to have sometimes migrations within migrations. Whilst you assess an application from a pure application perspective, you may look at the data stores or databases that application uses and make decisions on migrating databases, for example, to another platform as part of that overall migration. In terms of migration prioritization, AWS Professional Services has developed an approach to collect, manage and analyze application architectures. This model leverages a weighted scale and prioritization to deliver a report identifying logical application groupings for a phased migration into AWS. So we're at the point now where we start talking about all the fun stuff and where the magic happens. We've done all our analysis, our planning, we understand what our strategy is, and now we want to execute, we want to move workloads into AWS. So some of the prerequisites before you can actually move and execute your migration strategy is to have firm understanding of designs. What is the solution design and target? What is the migration plan? And the details of how you'll execute. And some of the best practices from our experience are to adopt an agile approach to sprint planning and execution, to estimate your migration efforts, and to establish performance validation and acceptance criteria. By doing this work up front, you'll be in a position to then undertake a proof of concept or a pilot with some candidate workloads to see what the reality is for you in terms of migrating those applications. There is, I can't emphasize this point enough. It is important to get started, to get experience, get your hands dirty with the platform, and then that experience will feed back and will be invaluable to refining your approach and fine-tuning your approach for the actual migration. Excuse me. Okay, the AWS Application Migration Framework. So this is a high-level view of the end-to-end process, but we're focused on the actual migration factory portion of this. So the migration cycle overall combines what we know about technology migrations, some of our experience helping organizations migrate their portfolios to AWS. This process, while based on experience, is intended to provide some guiding principles to help you approach your migration and not meant to prescribe hard and fast rules. The point here really is the migration process, the migration factory is all about consistency, repeatability, streamlined workflow, and ensuring standardization, which you continually iterate and feedback and refine your approach until you find your sweet spot. And underlying all this is automation. So as you look from the left to the right of this slide, the level of automation that gets employed should increase. And just to give you a commentary on my experience, your migration execution plan will change again and again and again. And the important thing, so I'll give an example. Over a recent engagement that I had over 3-4 months, that migration plan changed every 1.5 days on average. We're not talking about necessarily big changes, but it continually gets refined, it gets sharpened. And from a POC being undertaken to starting your first execution of moving workloads to production, you will continually discover and learn more, and you will need to have a mindset where you are open to refining that plan. So some considerations in terms of execution and that migration factory approach. One consideration is to prioritize recent applications. So obviously applications that are quite new to your environment, you're most likely to have the most documentation for and the most understanding of, and SMEs and staff that were involved in rolling out that application. The other consideration is to decommission old applications where possible. So this is, again, from our experience, we've seen repeatedly quite significant numbers of existing applications being identified to be decommissioned as part of a migration project. And on several occasions I've seen orders of magnitude of approximately 30% of applications and servers being tagged for commission as part of that migration program. The next consideration is, again, to iterate using sprints and to have that continual feedback cycle and improvements being incorporated into your approach. The last item there is, and the advice is to have a cloud center of excellence to accelerate your learning. You want to establish an A team on site that is focused on building out the capability of cloud computing technologies for the organization and seeding that capability for the company. Some of the other principles of a successful migration include the focus on developing a minimum viable product is the term we use at Amazon. So you will never be 100% ready to do a migration. And So acknowledging that is important, and then acknowledging that you'll have to have the mindset of starting small and again gaining that experience in the overall pursuit of reducing risk and going from uncertainty to certainty. So to again re-emphasize, we want to have an agile approach, we want to be iterative, repeatable, continual learning, and that will allow us to scale as well in terms of executing the migration. The other advantage of approaching the migration in this manner is that you will show quick value to the business and allow the overall business and the execs and so forth to gain confidence in this exercise, and that support will continue to swell as you get those results from an early stage. We want to avoid analysis paralysis via all these approaches and techniques, and start building experiences. Sorry. So, in terms of executing the migration, you need to look at and work out team structure, roles and responsibilities. So from the top, we want to have involvement of exec sponsorship and the business in terms of this exercise of migrating to the cloud. We want to have clear responsibilities and roles in terms of project control and leadership. And this is just a starting point in terms of what you're seeing on the screen here. You need to adapt this to what works in your environment, in your organisation, in terms of who will lead the migration from a project perspective, who will lead it from a technical perspective, and then at a more detailed level, who will undertake certain roles. Some considerations that you need to work through are, if hopefully you would have established a cloud team or center of excellence early on, and to work out how that team will be involved in the actual migration and in what areas, and then how do you then grow the capability to other participants. And this is just an example of what your team structures could look like. So you may have a team that focuses on portfolio discovery, another team that focuses on building out the foundational infrastructure and architecture in terms of on the cloud. Then you'll have possibly teams that are focused on certain types of migration patterns, for example, a lift and shift, or a rehosting, or replatforming, and so on. There's no one right answer here. It is, again, adapting and customizing this to what works best in your environment, given the resources and skill sets that you have. So here's an example of a successful cloud journey that one of our enterprise customers in Australia has undertaken. So the company involved here is heavily outsourced. It relies on different outsourced parties to run and manage many of their applications and infrastructure. And it takes approximately 3 months for the outsourced provider to stand up a new server. This organisation has 400 applications. Its primary drivers for moving to the cloud is to reduce costs, as well as to enable its app dev teams to be more innovative and more agile through a self-service capability. The organisation has pursued a cloud adoption strategy that enables them to build out a new cloud capability that will provide over time as the capabilities further enhanced and matured. So the approach that this customer took, sponsor, establishing a cloud center of excellence and undertaking a pilot or POC of 3 high impacting workloads. That center of excellence then developed a future cloud operating model, business case, and a 9-month program roadmap to build out the cloud capability over 3 phases. That first phase was focused on designing and building a minimum viable product, or MVP, that was used to demonstrate high-value apps on AWS, included standing up networking, hybrid architecture, identity access management, AWS account structure, developer tools, and so on. Phase 2 involved focused on integrating core service management functions into the platform, such as release management, change management, event management, and building out standard SOEs and lifecycle management capability, and then standing up a service catalog that enabled developers to start self-servicing the consumption of standardized approved cloud patterns. When you get to that point, it really is an inflection point in terms of that, being, your internal customers and users being able to self-service, and the adoption takes a big step up from there. Phase 3 of this experience focused on building out additional capabilities that would position the platform capability to be able to support production-grade workloads. So this example just demonstrates that cloud transformations don't have to be like the traditionally designed monolith programs where you have to have months of planning spent before you can actually start your migration. So this is an example of a migration sprint schedule. So the two takeaways from this are that the productivity and throughput and earned value in terms of your migration teams see through the sprints rises. That experience from the first sprint where you do your POC will then give them more confidence and understanding of how to do this in an more efficient way, and you'll see more and more automation come into the process as you go along, and then you'll peak at some point in terms of the capability and throughput of those teams, and as you go through your backlog of applications to move to AWS, at some point you'll start to release resources and wind down the involvement of the resources on the migration effort. The other main point to take away here is, as we look at large programs, there is obviously the migration stream itself, but then we have the data center decommissioning stream typically on these types of large engagements. Migration tools. So there are a number of tools available to you natively in terms of offered by AWS to assist you in migrating to the cloud. Everything from the AWS Snowball, which was made available in Australia earlier this year, to the AWS Database Migration Service, VM Import Export allows you to deploy workloads across your infrastructure. In recent weeks, there's been a release of the AWS Server Migration Service. So this automates the actual migration of existing virtualized applications. And on top of that, there are a whole swag of offerings on the AWS Marketplace to help you migrate your applications to the cloud. The wider picture here is all the offerings related to various aspects of a migration effort that are available from ISVs, and there are a lot of them. AWS Professional Services has had experience working with I think virtually all these tools, and we can certainly are happy to work with our customers using any one of these tool sets on a migration engagement. Okay, so some migration best practices. First thing, in terms of identifying applications to move, it may be straightforward, but let's start with it. Standalone applications they're going to have least impact, they're siloed, and it's low friction in terms of moving what's standalone. And at the next level down, applications that are loosely coupled are also good candidates to move to the clouds as a first instance. I mentioned before, new applications obviously have more documentation and organizational knowledge available. And the other side of this is that tightly integrated applications need more planning and need to have rigor and discipline around the earlier stages of the app migration lifecycle in terms of app discovery. Some low-hanging fruit in terms of getting some quick wins on the board are dev and test workloads or applications, self-contained web apps, and some of the others that you can read there. What you need to be aware of and be careful of is 32-bit applications and non-Linux and Windows applications, anything that is has a characteristic of being a multicast application, and so on. The other important discipline or best practice to keep in mind and try and follow is to certainly conduct total cost of ownership in terms of the applications that you want to move to AWS, understand what their current cost profile is, and project what they would be on AWS, and really have a firm understanding to what, again, goes back to the benefits and objectives that you have from moving from your on-premise environment to the cloud. And these are just some of the aspects to consider when building out that total cost of ownership. This is the minimum baseline that you need to incorporate in that sort of exercise. The next page here is further additional aspects that are nice to have. Ideally, in an ideal world, you will include this in your TCO, but sometimes this can take more time to garner all these sorts of inputs. The third item here is, and again I want to emphasise how important this is. A migration pilot or POC is just a must. It will allow your teams and people to have lots of questions answered and to really understand the intricacies and details of the AWS platform, and allow them to identify opportunities to expedite the migration itself just from that experience. It will also allow you to refine your estimations and costings of what the migration will involve. This saying here at the bottom, there is no compression algorithm for experience. This is a saying that we frequently quote in AWS, and I wholeheartedly agree with this. And if I ever find the person that made up that saying, I want to give them a T-shirt or something, because it is absolutely truth. So, migration success stories. So let's just look at some past experiences and references in terms of organisations moving to the cloud. Now, the first two here you'll see examples with a pharmaceutical company that over 24 months moved 800 servers with 10 people. And the second one there is a retail organisation moving 150 servers with 10 people over 6 months. These are examples of the old world, and what I mean by that is where you migrate workloads and applications in a manual fashion, manual discovery, manual migration itself. When you contrast that to experience we've had in Australia with one of our banks, over a period of 4 months and only 5 people involved, 500 servers were moved. And that was automated discovery with some manual steps, but automated tooling used, and the migration was automated in full. You can see the difference there. You can derive from that all the implications in terms of the business exec and sponsors seeing value far earlier and quickly than if you try and do this without the right tooling to automate that process. So migration success factors, migration playbooks. You want to retain the lessons learned and foster the knowledge that you build up within your organization. That will make each subsequent migration easier. Automate, automate, and automate. So good to again, up front, it may be fine to do things manually to get that experience and really understand the detail, but after that, you need to automate everything that you can. The third point there that mentioned before as well, you need to bring your A team, not bringing people that may be available or on the bench or what have you, but really look at handpicking the top candidates and bringing the best team to build up the expertise and competency for the organisation and to really nail the migration. And then to communicate that experience back to the wider IT team and business. The fourth point there is, so moving to the cloud is not enough. You really need to think about modernising your applications to take full advantage of this new world, of this new platform. And the last point there, so at first you don't need, at first you need to do individual app migrations to learn the ropes, but again, to get maximum benefit, you want to move at scale. Plan what your path to scale looks like and be very deliberate and diligent about it. Okay. As we close, I'd just like to again to have everyone ask themselves, what if you devote more resources to things that matter and move faster while being secure? Because that is the equation that we are talking about here. In terms of that is the value proposition that is available to you as customers by moving to the cloud. This is what is compelling the enterprises we speak with to move forward and toward a cloud-first model. And as an example, this is what caused the CIO of GE to call out AWS as his trusted partner that is going to run our company, i.e. GE, for the next 140 years. And one footnote to this is that GE is the only company on the S&P 500 that is still alive today from its earlier origins. Today, the life of a company on the S&P 500 is 13 years. 50 years ago, it was 60 years. By 2025, 75% of the companies on the S&P 500 will not exist. And that's a very powerful set of statistics to quote and really shows the level of change and disruption that organisations and industries are undergoing as technology advances. So that concludes the main content